get some more on all of this, Congressman. Adam Schiff of California is joining us. He's the senior Democrat, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you, Wolf.
So we heard from the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer today that President Trump won't put a stop to any investigation into his national security advisor Michael Flynn's possible ties to Russia. Are you encouraged by that?
Well, I don't know. As much as you can be encouraged, I guess, by anything he says, because he'll say something in the morning and then contradict it later that day. But we intend to hold him to it, and we intend to hold the intelligence agencies and law enforcement to it. We'll be conducting our own investigation in the House Intelligence Committee, just as the Senate will. And we're determined to follow the facts wherever they lead.
Are there any facts that you've come up with so far that indicate any wrongdoing on the part of the National Security Advisor, General Flynn?
I can't go into the progress of the investigation yet. We have been essentially trying to begin the first step, which is gathering documents to look at what was underpinning the public assessment and the classified assessment of Russia's active measures campaign. But that's, of course, just one part of the investigation. That doesn't go into potential contacts with the Trump campaign or Trump officials. But I think all of that will be part of the investigation.
Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, indicated today, Congressman, that the Trump administration would work more with Russia as much as possible to fight ISIS. He didn't even rule out finding common ground potentially with the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, in order to fight ISIS. Do you believe if Rex Tillerson is confirmed for Secretary of State, and it looks like he will be, that he would consider those options?
Well, I have deep concerns about this candidate for Secretary of State. His, I think, pro-Russian views, and of course this was somebody who received the Order of Friendship from Putin himself, caused me great consternation. I also have severe questions about whether he can put the business interests aside of the company that he long ran. He did not, I think, give very convincing answers as to whether he would be tough on sanctions on Russia. So there are a lot of profound questions. I think he will do his best to implement President Trump's policies, but the Russian interests are not aligned with ours. And the president, when he was a candidate, talked about how the Russians were attacking ISIS in Syria. In fact, the Russians have been attacking the moderate opposition, been doing very little about ISIS, as in fact the president's own nominee for CIA director has said. So a lot of profound questions about what the Trump policy will really be here, and I would put no trust in Russia whatsoever.
So you would say it's not wise for the U.S. to allow Russia to have this increased influence in the Middle East?
Certainly not. If their interest really is propping up the Assad regime, maintaining Russian influence in the region, and that is not our interest at all. There may be small concentric areas of overlapping interest. Certainly there are some areas in the fight against terror where we share an interest with Russia. But by and large, the Russians have a very different game plan than us. I think they will use us. And in fact, we already saw the Russians claiming that we're doing joint bombing runs or joint air operations, which is a complete fiction and propaganda on their part, and just shows how little trust we can put in them.
Are you okay with the administration, the Trump administration, now walking back some of the statements made by the then candidate and now the president, that he would quickly move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Now they seem to be walking that back. Sean Spicer is saying that they got to make a decision, they got to study it. Is a delay okay with you?
Yes, I think that they ought to really understand the full consequences of this. I imagine what is causing them to delay is they're getting feedback from all over the region in terms of what this would do and the pressure it would put on some of our allies in the region, as well as how it could inflame things and move the parties potentially further away from the peace process. So I imagine they're getting a full measure of feedback on this. It's probably the reason why past presidents have made the same campaign commitment but found it very difficult to deliver.
So I just want to be precise. So you do not think the United States should move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, is that right?
I think it ought to be part of the negotiated solution by the Israelis and Palestinians, part of the negotiated outcome. I don't think that we should jump ahead of the parties in this, and I would hate to see it have the impact of inflaming things in the region. So I really think this ought to be the subject of negotiation between the parties.
At the White House press briefing today, Sean Spicer also said his intention, in his words, is never to lie, but that sometimes, he said, that we can disagree with the facts. Do you think President Trump and his administration are committed to telling the truth based on what you've seen so far?
Based on what I've seen so far, regrettably, no. I think we have seen some very flagrant examples of the president simply making up his own facts to suit himself. The most flagrant example, there have been a couple, were when he invented millions of illegal immigrants voting. That was his way of explaining why he lost the popular vote. That's a complete fabrication fiction, and an incendiary one at that. If he's willing to say things like that, if he's willing to make claims about the intelligence agencies, compare them to Nazi Germany when they confront him with facts he doesn't like, if he's willing to misrepresent what's in the Intelligence Committee's reports on Russian active measures, all of these things bode very ill for how he will be as Commander-in-Chief. We need to be able to believe our president, but some of the things he has said and done since he won the election and been sworn in call that very